call?
Is he good to go? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Jorge Dominguez, president.
Present.
George Beckelheimer, president, and Erasmo Villarreal, president at this workshop. The next item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Being that there is no flag, I don't know if we'll do north. North is this way. So I guess I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. All right, the next item is discussion with possible action regarding the revision of the City of Laredo Land Development Code, Chapter 24, Article 4, and Article 5, for the purpose of amending the dimensional standards, setback requirements, and other matters incident thereto. With that being said, I will now open it up and let Victor Linares make the presentation.
Okay, Victor Linares, Acting Building Director, for the record, just in case there's a sign-in sheet. If, I know we have, I guess.
There is one.
And just for sign up. What I want to do just briefly is at least provide just a summary of what we submitted, just for your reference.
Sure.
I do want to apologize. We are having network issues that we're really limited on internet and even a capability of printing some items. And so we tried our best. We were using our personal cell phones to kind of navigate the web. And so it's a weird situation. The only thing from the items requested, just to summarize, I'm gonna work it backwards, where I know Mr. Lozano helped me kind of provide some feedback. You're gonna see an email from Karina Castillo.
Yes.
That's pretty much some feedback or some commentary or / research that Nathan through Karina Castillo provided in regards to setbacks. And so we at least wanted to provide that email just for reference. At the very end of that email, of that packet, of that sample packet, you'll see a survey at the very end. That survey was kind of provided with the agenda for reference, just to digest in the earlier process. The purpose of this survey is one of the goals. I know one that you guys had, the commission had a request in trying to really find that research on what the public thinks or such, you know, and so what we did, we came out with some questions.
Sure.
And what I guess before I finished, what we wanted to do with these questions was, if you guys feel comfortable, if we need to edit, add, delete, or anything that makes you feel comfortable or that's missing. And like that, we do have Rafael Benavides, he's our public information officer, or PIO, and pretty much he'll be helping us when it comes to either ironically posting on the website or using social media. We do have like Facebook or such where we can try to post this and try to get a survey per such. And for sure, at the other component,
Oh, you Survey Monkey?
Survey Monkey.
Yep.
And if anything, also with Rafael Benavides, he coordinates a lot with the networks, local networks, so we can try to promote that with KGNS, Univision, et cetera, that, hey, there's a survey out there, please let us know what you think. We're trying to,
Gentlemen, join us.
go ahead.
We have designated seating for you, and so be cautious.
How are you, my dear friend?
I'm good.
Pretty much just if anything, gentlemen, I just started with pretty much with an email that has the Karina Castillo on top. That's just some communication from our former planning director. And I was just talking about the survey attached at the very end of that package. And pretty much our goal was to present it publicly with
Let me
just-
interrupt you.
Ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, can we reopen the meeting so we can recognize the commissioners, and then we will open as planning and zoning, so we can go ahead and be able to make a recommendation at this time?
We can.
Do you
I
have
think what we'll
motion
do,
for that?
since I've already opened the meeting, as a workshop, the only thing we're gonna do is add to the record that we do have 2 additional commissioners present, Carlos Flores and Abby Lugo, and that constitutes a quorum for us to go ahead and open up and conduct business. So let that record reflect that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, no problem. And so pretty much we have these questions, and we'll run through it in a second. The other components that you see in your package, you do have an array of of setback charts and summaries of different municipalities. The only one that's not included here is from the city of Austin, because the city of Austin has a separate, a wide booklet for such. But what we do have,
Let the record reflect Mr. Ugalde has arrived. Thank you for joining us.
and just in case, what I did include at the very front is pretty much a summary of these different municipalities. Of course, the very first one is Laredo. We did get some feedback from Austin, Corpus Christi, Del Rio, McAllen, San Antonio. And San Antonio is just a long list of zones, and so it's just continued to the bottom. And so pretty much the attachments, you might not need them too much really with the summary, is just to give you the characteristics. What we try to focus, just in case, we're not including like mobile homes or multi-families, but we really try to focus on the single-family residential, just in case. There's more zones that they have. And so also what I also try to do is pretty much set them in order, because the discussion really allowed us just the front and the rear setback. And so you'll see that every municipality has the front and rear setback in the beginning. The only thing, just to kind of as a trend that I noticed, is that there's some municipalities that do have a shorter set of setbacks, but I've noticed that are for smaller lot criterias. And it almost seems that on the bigger cities, they promote that on more on the inner city component. That's just the general pattern, and if you notice, there's some larger setbacks, and those seem to be promoted more on the outer part of the city. And there's an array of setbacks, and I'll let you guys just kind of view it and kind of digest to it, and pretty much presenting these, three items. I don't know if I mentioned this in the beginning, we did not provide any zoning maps. What we did notice is a lot of these municipalities have a large data file. When it comes to City of Laredo, to be honest, we're a little bit chiflados. It's easy to print out, and it's easy to observe the entire city with no issue with the color schemes and seeing the zone patterns. As a good example, the city of Austin does have a zoning map, but it provides this large zoning map and sub-zoning map, so it was really hard to really provide that information. And so I apologize if I cannot provide that information easily for you.
The survey.
Oh, and then the survey itself. And pretty much the discussion points for these are pretty much for reference. Discussion points would be what you guys feel with the setbacks presented in other municipalities, and for sure something that we do want a strong feedback is when it comes to the survey component. Like that, whatever makes you happy or unhappy, we'll feel free to add, delete, or edit. And like that, the next step from our part will be promoted with our PIO and try to get hopefully some feedback from the public.
Vic, let me ask you, I'm going through the chart that you gave us, excellent work, thank you. I'm noticing that a lot of the cities where they have reduced setbacks, like rear setbacks, most of them seem to be like a 10.
Correct.
But yet, their lot area is like 10,000, there's another one that's 22,000, 90,000. McAllen has a 5,600 square foot for duplexes, where they have a 10-foot rear setback. San Antonio, and this must be what you're talking about, the inner city, they have, what was it, R2 single family residential. It's a 2,000 square foot lot with a 5-foot rear, 10-foot front and 5-foot rear. However, they have a qualifier on this thing where you can only build on 50% of the lot area.
That's correct.
So it's like, because the setback situation becomes irrelevant because you move up or down based on that setback, because they're already reducing your footprint 1,000. So it's not like you can build, the whole lot area, okay? Which was one of the things that, I said, well, a lot of the stuff can work, but you gotta have a maximum buildable area that you can allow.
And if you notice, just to add, the big cities like Austin and San Antonio, they do have, of course, like you mentioned, that percentage of coverage, and the city of Austin does have an impervious cover requirement also.
For the front?
For the entire property.
For the entire property?
Yeah, if you see the last two rows on Austin, they have the maximum building coverage, the percentage.
Oh, yes.
And also the max impervious cover,
So
meaning,
that-
I guess, green space.
Yeah, and that's, Yeah, I could see that. I mean, they're basically saying, yeah, I'll give you mobility within that lot, but I'm limiting what you can build.
Oh, and something to kind of just do another, my last 2 cents on it. Another article that I wasn't able to print out. There was an article from the architects. It's the AIA Association, and I think the article was back in 2016 or such, that they were pretty much stating that California was looking into updating zones to have lesser setbacks. But when you read the article, it focused a lot on inner city areas, and so it almost seemed like it focused a certain zone. It wasn't entirely for the whole city, and so they mentioned like Los Angeles, and I can't remember if it was San Francisco or San Diego.
And I can understand, you know, in those areas, their problem is availability of land. Everything is very, very expensive.
Mhm.
So I can see where, you know, trying to maximize that little piece of property that you buy. I think what the average price in San Francisco for housing is somewhere close to $1 million,
Yeah.
you know, and that's the average. And then you move to LA and it's, you know, the congestion is just the same. So it wouldn't be fair for us to use the standard from California to Texas. We would have to stay within the state, I think. But I get what you're trying to tell us.
I have a-
Yes, go ahead,
I want
George.
to point some, pardon me, Mr. Chairman. On the Austin thing, unless I misunderstood you all, because this will lend into how we're always, what do you call it, you know, the runoff, you know, we're pushing water into the streets all the time, so if you put a building with 5-foot setbacks, and the building itself obviously is impervious coverage.
Right.
The Austin one, I don't believe, it's 40% building and only 5% more, at 45, I believe is what they're saying. You can't have more than 45% total impervious coverage, is that how you understand? That means that 55% has to be grass or something.
Right.
That's right, to catch the rainwater, that's what that's about.
I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the comments, and I totally forgot we made this comment to the TRB. One of the comments that we've made, it has 3 components to it, that when it comes to increasing density or surface area or such in per lot, usually when I'm talking in a civil engineering perspective, me being at the private sector, that usually you master plan a subdivision. Every subdivision, if it's residential, single family residential, there's a per capita demand for water and sewer. There's also a runoff coefficient for single family residential. And so one quick example is when it comes to residential, I believe it was like 0.4, 0.45 on the runoff, but then you have like industrial, where it's all parking lot, all warehousing, the runoff is 1, because it's literally, there's nothing impervious in it. And so having that same concept, one of just as a concern that we wanted to present to council, whatever they decide to do or not to do, that if for some reason they want to increase the density, our next recommendation to the TRB was to analyze the per capita of water and sewer, because in generally we are increasing density, and also the runoff coefficient having to do with the discussion you just mentioned. And so that's a little thing that we don't want to forget about, whatever gets decided on the setbacks. So.
That's a good point, because everything's already engineered.
Correct.
Everything's already existing, and
Well,
to come into an existing area that's already engineered from water, from sewer, and from runoff,
Mhm.
and then to change it, it's gonna impact the system big time.
Yes.
A good example, I won't mention the subdivision, but it's in one of the latest subdivisions that they had a lot of business, the zone was business. One of the things that business does allow is multifamily. And so what was happening with that subdivision, that commercial subdivision, was since the commercial market went a little bit low, the multifamily went up. Residential went slow also. And so pretty much all these B1s, B2s, you know, they started making apartment complexes that the subdivision itself choked on its own water and sewer capacity.
Sure.
And so that's a great example of pretty much changing the use.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the concern, where we had some existing subdivisions that were already engineered, and we're changing it to higher density. It might be maybe one or 2 persons per capita. It might not be much if there's a study to analyze it, but when you see the bigger picture, I don't foresee the immediate mains, but more the trunk lines being an issue. That's a good.
There's a big problem, Mr. Chairman. What we have discussed here, it's only the tip of the actual problem that is being created in those subdivisions. We have, Concord Hills is one of the subdivisions that we had a lot of problems in flooding. And one of the reasons is that even though it comes to us nicely engineered, when, when, when all the subdivision is built, then we don't have enough capacity to release the water when we have a rain event. And what does that create? Well, actually creates a lot of flooding and a lot of damages for the resident. So I'm not, I can actually see what this is, but this is Laredo is completely different to Austin, San Antonio, even like you mentioned, San Francisco. This is completely different. I actually contacted some of the residents in District 1, and all they wanna do, they wanna be allowed to use some of the setbacks to increase either the living quarters for a family member, or maybe a palapa, or something that they can enjoy. But as far as having the city developed with 5 feet setbacks, there's a lot of problems. One of them is that when you have the finished floor elevation, I think the ordinance calls for anything about 8 inches. So if you were to have a disability ramp on it, it's 1 foot, it's 1 inch per foot on the slope. So how can you make a ramp from the rear door? It's just no distance. I did an evaluation myself, and we actually need 12 feet. That would be a perfect setback. See, why? Because we're gonna have 8 feet that are gonna be on the slope, and then we're gonna have a landing of 4 feet. See, the other option, if they decide to go with 5 feet setback, then we need to create that the rear door is at least 12 feet from the limit of the property. Let's say that they have like a patio. See, it's we have the lot. Let me get the board real quick. If we have a property right here, and then we get construction, which we have 5 feet and 5 feet, and then we're gonna talk about the front in a bit. But let's suppose that they decide to go on 5 feet right here, see?
Where's the
Then
front?
This is
Of
the
lot?
rear.
Rear, okay.
Yes. So if they go on 5 feet, if they decide that in order to create the proper living conditions, then the door, that exit, that the rear door would actually have to be, whether it opens in and out, that the distance from here to here be 12 feet. So that way that this would be a wall 5 feet in that section right here. But we still have, we're allowing a patio for the enjoyment of the resident. So if we go 5 feet right here, then a rear door, anywhere you put it, to the side or to the rear, it will not work. Because actually the finished floor elevation will be 8 inches right here. So if you want to create a ramp, you actually need 8 feet with a landing plus 4, so you need about 12 feet. That's on the rear. So 5 feet is not gonna work at all. Then we got the problem of the building. We got 5 feet to the fence right here. So we have the overhang, which is about 22 inches.
Yeah.
Now, provided that this is not a block fence, if this is a block fence, we have another 8 inches, so this is no longer 5 feet. It'll be 5 feet to the back of the
Fence,
fence.
depending on where it's placed.
But it's
Yes.
not 5 feet to the wall, it's 5 feet to the overhang?
It's to the property line.
It's 5 feet to the wall, because, here's the thing, he's talking about, when you do a block fence,
Oh, that.
depending on where you set it, if I set it on my property, I just lost that dimension, right? Most of the time, they're either on one lot or the other. Seldom are they half and half. So when you lose that, you know, that's what he's talking about. You're losing,
8 inches.
you're losing 8 inches because you're going up, the only thing you can go up is to the wall.
This is,
So,
this is what it's.
and
George.
the other thing that he didn't
Block
mention
fence.
right now was that
8 inches right
Yes.
here.
what he's talking about in construction, let's assume you had a 5 foot setback in the rear and you build up to it, it has to be totally masonite. You can't use wood,
Ordinance says 7 feet.
because wood, you need 7 feet in between the property. So that means you need 7 and 7, you need 14 feet so fire doesn't jump.
If you have siding here, unless you're using concrete masonite
It's
flagging.
gotta be, yeah, masonite.
So is the conclusion that this setback idea is a bad idea, we should just say no?
Well, 5 feet doesn't work, I mean, that's the way I see that, it just, to me, it's, here's the other thing, and I think Vic touched on it briefly.
Real quick over the, just over.
I'm sorry,
the-
go ahead.
And then, if we have a subdivision, which I think that's what they plan to do, okay? There's gonna be the setback on both of them.
Yeah.
When we have rain, either we need to provide a drainage in between the lots, because otherwise, all the runoff from the roof will not be able, 10 feet will not be able to hold the water. Actually, the water, what's gonna happen is that we have the building, and then we have the fence right here, the water coming in here, and the water coming in here. This is the 8 inches, so the water is gonna go into the house. It's not, there's no way, unless you have drainage on these areas, then we can.
Well, everything that the two of y'all are saying though is the crafting of a regulation for somebody who wants to build a new subdivision that looks like that.
Yeah, it's.
Right, this couldn't possibly apply citywide in
Yeah,
retroactively.
No, I mean, no, and that's the thing that Victor touched on it briefly. When they designed subdivisions, they designed them, they took into consideration utility usage, which is water and sewer. They took impervious cover, rooftops, and they went ahead and sized everything based on certain parameters. Now to go back and say all of a sudden, well, we're changing the parameter, and we got a whole lot more roof, and we got a lot more water that's gonna fall somewhere, but it can't be absorbed because there's no ground, so it's gonna flow. And the detention area that we made was already sized. So I got more water going into a detention area, it's gonna flood. Because those are things that nobody has really discussed. Jorge brought it up, he's an engineer, so he knows a lot of these issues. It's kind of ill-conceived, if you wanna say, right now. Now, I understand what they were trying to, I guess, promote and say, look, there's a lot of people that need to add an additional bedroom, okay? Well, but the problem is, how do you do that? Is 5 feet, well, 5 feet obviously I don't think is a proper, setback that would work. I mean, it's like I told them, I think one of the last meetings, I said, well, if I got 5 feet and I wanna do some carne asada, which everybody does, the smoke's gonna blow into the guy's window next door.
Yeah.
Or if I got a dog and he's barking all night, my God, he's right there, So, I mean, these are things that
No,
we
I
really
agree.
need to think about. It's not like, unfortunately, home ownership is a difficult situation, and I know that right now it's probably difficult for a lot of people, and so that's why they're trying to figure out.
Well, you're being very generous.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I think the council member who was kind of looking at trying to do some things for his area was saying, hey, my constituents are asking me, can we add that additional bedroom into that rear setback? And I think some of this then got construed, and the TRB probably got this idea and said, well, why don't we just go 5-5-5 all around and make it easy, without thinking about impervious cover, without thinking about what is the maximum size of dwelling that you can build on the lot. Otherwise, what you're gonna end up having, in my opinion, is you're gonna have what was a single family residential type area now becomes multifamily because the density factor per acre goes up big time. And to me, when your density factor goes up and it wasn't factored into your services, I just see that we're asking for a problem in for the rest of the residents who might reside in that area that may decide, you know what, guys? Let's just say X neighborhood, whatever it is. X neighborhood decided that there's 200 dwellings in there, and out of those 200 dwellings, 100 of them decided to go ahead and add to the max. Well, now you got a lot of runoff coming off, because now you got more rooftops. You may have, and anytime you add, usually there's an addition of a bathroom, which is in another fixture or two. And when you start adding fixtures, that weren't designed for the size of lines, well, now you're gonna have lower pressures. When you start adding additional sewage into the sewer line that wasn't designed, well, now you got another issue. So there's so much that it's really very difficult to try to change things. I'm sorry, go ahead, I've been hogging the
No,
damn thing.
I think that's.
Let me go ahead and let the record reflect that Jose Diaz has joined us, please.
I apologize for being late.
That's it.
I think another angle of this, I think we have not talked about is, there's an entire chapter in the comp plan on housing, and I think they have very specific goals in that comp plan about housing. And I think that, you know, the city has given policy direction. Obviously, not all of the ordinances have been, updated, to fully execute what that comp plan is gonna do, and I understand that. But I think that that would be another reason why we would either vote no or wait, because, you know, we don't want to approve something that, you know, may be out of step with what the planning, you know, department and the comp plan's vision is for the city, you know, and maybe there's gonna be places where there's gonna be a need for a 5-foot setback on the front and the end. But maybe it's gonna be because there's a specific plan for that development where that makes sense, and they have taken all of this into account.
It's been engineered for
It's
that.
been engineered for that.
Okay, and that's exactly, you know, where some of these things kinda have to fall. Like you said, the comp plan, yeah, it'll allow for different types of development, you know, but if it's new development, you're engineering for it. The other thing that has to be thought of here is, even if, let's assume that we did, or that in the future something went forth with these reduced setbacks, you now need to figure out, where am I gonna put this? Am I gonna put it next to an R1? You know, there's, the thought process is,
Yeah.
there's a lot of factors that would go into this. I'm sorry, Johnny?
Yeah, I guess when I saw this originally, I guess one of the things that stood out was that it was 5 feet across the whole board for each zone, where I thought, you know, it's not appropriate. I thought maybe if they did certain zonings, maybe like the R1A or even the R1NH, as, you know, a possibility of reducing some setback, but the extremity of going from 20 to 5 is just too extreme, and then for them to go across the board without even thinking about the repercussions of doing that. And as Commissioner Flores was saying, you know, if we pre-engineer or pre-specify as far as certain subdivisions, okay, we're gonna design it this way, and the homeowner has the opportunity, the option to actually put themselves in that situation.
Yes.
Then I could see where it's possibly, you know, it's a possibility, but for them to go retroactive or to say for all existing, then, you know, we're asking for some serious repercussions in the future. And with the way natural disasters are happening these days, we're getting more floods than we're getting. I mean, the weather's not the way it was planned. We have to start planning for what we're seeing today and what we're gonna be seeing in the future. And I think, you know, we get flooding now with the setbacks we have. Can you imagine when, like you said, they get reduced, it's gonna be even more extreme.
And, good.
I was just gonna ask, and I apologize, this is repetitive. How does this affect, because in some of those, I think the R1A, they wanted to put the utility lines in the front, so that whether it be electric, don't have to go to people's backyards.
Right.
Is that already incorporated in the 20, or is that gonna be the additional 5?
No, the front setback right now is already an ordinance, it's already in the 20. Okay, that's already there.
With 10 of it
I'm
being
sorry,
easement?
out of the 20, half of it is an easement,
Yes.
10 of it.
Yeah.
Because AEP mandated that they wanted 10 feet. When the ordinance was written, when we wrote that ordinance up, because I wrote that right away ordinance up, we did 5 feet for utilities in the very front. And then AEP came in and says, well, I want 10 because I want my transformer boxes and another 5 feet back so nobody runs into it. And then I guess over the last 6 years, it got changed sometime. But it's 10 right now. It's 10.
I think that you wanna do something like, I mean, obviously, we're not city council, but, you know, it would seem to me like you're gonna do an exception to the rule because it's gonna provide some other value. You know, there's gonna be some other reason for it other than just, you know, the city policy can't be that 2 residents in South Laredo in District 1 wanna add an extra bedroom to their house, so now we're gonna change the entire policy for the entire city. and that just can't be.
I agree with you.
Well, here's the
Can't
other
be the
thing.
genesis of it. The genesis of it has to be something more like, you know, there's.
Let me
there's
go
these-
ahead and interject something in here, because along what you're saying is this, cost-benefit ratio hasn't been established, okay? I mean, like I said, if we do X number of rooftops and it wasn't engineered for that, well, now you got a problem, water and sewer and drainage.
Yeah.
Now the taxpayer has to say, hey, guys, I gotta upgrade all this stuff now. And so the cost-benefit ratio, somebody needs to run numbers on cost benefits.
So, I have a question, if I may. So right now, if you wanna build up and another bedroom and bathroom upstairs, that's allowed?
Yes.
correct.
So you're adding more fixtures already now, right? And you potentially can add another bathroom and add more capacity to the lines.
And if I may, for the record, Roland Lozano with building, we presented this to the technical review board, that for these setback, doesn't mean that you're not allowing the homeowner to build. They can go vertical. So, again, we're just trying to present information that this, commission required. I know Mr. Linares pointed out, the only, study that was done for, I guess, psychological health that we found was that the less dense, the better it is. And this is in your package right at the end, before that. And so what we are gonna propose is also propose a survey to put out, whether via Twitter, I don't know, Facebook or something, for the citizens, and broadcast it out and bring you back actual feedback of what citizens want. Now, we provided a quote unquote, and I don't wanna change the conversation, I wanted just to throw it out,
Okay.
because we're bringing information so you guys can be more informed as this commission did.
No. Just in case to answer on the height component, the very last row, and some other municipalities have it, for the city of Laredo, it does identify the max height per zone. And so, for instance, R1 allows 2.5, R1A 2 stories, and 2 stories, 2.5, I'm assuming it's the attic component.
Vic, let me ask you a quick question before.
Mhm.
When you were in the private sector and you were designing a subdivision, were you leaving a little bit of extra capacity in the water and sewer in case somebody decided to add up later on?
Usually, it depends. If you're trying to think conservatively, usually when you master plan, you start sizing you do like the same principle as the storm, where you do your watersheds and such. You use that topo to analyze where that sewer is going. And so when you have an area, pretty much with the zone, it has a different density or usage, and so multifamily wouldn't be compared to residential.
Right.
And so the only caution that would be given to the developer is just the limits, knowing the limits of your zones and such. And if you wanna be more conservative, then, you do a multifamily, like that you increase, and that's the way to kind of increase that pipe diameter.
But let me,
Mhm.
if you were in the private sector and you designed a single-family residential,
Mhm.
Subdivision, when that design was done, was the sizing of the water and the sewer, was it maxed to just X number of units in that subdivision, like single family?
Mhm.
Or was there like, there's 10% capacity for somebody wants to add up or
Yeah,
something?
Pretty much it's
I can
nodes.
answer that too.
Yeah.
Because I have a certification in stormwater pollution, and, it's 120%. It's 20% over, actually, when.
The build is.
When we do a study, we add 20%.
There's also like safety factors, like a 1.5. To be honest, I kind of forgot that safety factor. I can remember it's 1.5 or 2.5 that gives that little buffer. But to be honest, that's more of if you ever have a jam in the system. So that's what that extra
It
buffer
has
is.
a little bit of extra flow.
Yeah.
And the reason I was asking you that is because of what Raul mentioned here a little bit about, what are people already building up,
Mhm.
So I said, okay, we're adding fixtures to it, so the lines do have a little bit of capacity when you add up.
Mhm.
But not that if everyone in that subdivision were to add up. Normally, what you're doing is you're saying, hey, less than 10% of the subdivision is gonna add additional fixtures.
The other component, just to hope maybe this might be what you're looking for, is what I recall from water and sewer, I think it was like a 3.7 per capita per household.
Okay,
And so if that's the number, that's kind of like an average. So
Sure.
meaning that the guy next door could have 4, the guy next door could have 2.
right.
And so that average was the 3.7
Yeah,
per capita.
yeah, okay.
And so that's kind of that flexibility that, you know, some are gonna be higher, some are gonna be lower.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Carlos?
Okay, a couple of points. I think first of all, I think Raul makes a good point, which I can't believe I just said that, but
You say more often than
his
not.
his point still doesn't address what you are saying, which is, you know, what about the fire safety hazards on the setbacks? Cause now, hold on, cause now you're closer to the neighbor's property than you were before. What about noise? What about the fact that, you know, the study that the city showed, which is maybe just one study about, you know, mental health, impact on, you know, sizes of yards. So I think, like, while you're right, one element of it is, well, if people can already be building, then who cares about what the stress is on the sewage system and the utility
No, but
system?
that's not, okay, so you don't let me finish. So the biggest issue is the runoff, because if you, the setback to 5 foot all around, I think is too extreme. And what most people do here is add concrete. So if you're gonna give them 5 foot on all sides, you're gonna add concrete to the back, concrete to the side. And that's a definite runoff with no green space
Yeah.
so the water, so that's a big issue. So the 5 foot on all around is just too extreme.
Well, you know, here's another one that we hadn't
And the water
considered. Let me
Hold
throw
on,
it
hold on,
out.
let me
All right,
finish.
go
I'm
ahead,
in the
go
middle of
ahead,
my thought.
go
I'm in the
ahead.
middle of my thought.
Go ahead.
I'm in the middle of my thought. But this is a little bit comparing apples to oranges. I haven't fully thought the idea through, but I wanna throw it out there. When the city decides to put a stop sign in an intersection, I would imagine it's because there's data on the traffic flow. And then when they decide to put a stop sign, instead of a stop sign, they decide to put a light, it's because of the traffic flow. Like, in other words, there is
Yes.
objective data
Yes.
that is gonna determine whether this should be no stop sign, red light. I don't feel like we have objective data of like, this is why this is right. Like, this is why we should do it. And I think that I'm happy to get public input. I absolutely, and let's do the survey. Maybe we do need to do the survey. But these are not experts. These are not people who are gonna know. If you ask me whether we should have a light at Bartlett and wherever, I'm gonna tell you no. Why? Because I travel that place all the time and the light is a pain in the ass for me. But you know what? I'm not a traffic expert. I don't know whether that's safer or not safer. I will never know, right? Because that's not my expertise. So I really don't think that this helps us. I think that this is just, you know, gonna be people who don't know saying what they want. And that's not what we need.
Okay.
We need, and last point.
Yeah.
I'll give you a different example. Comp plan says we wanna develop residential in downtown. Okay, what are the obstacles to developing residential in downtown? X, Y, and Z. Okay, what can we do to fix X, Y, and Z? The city can do this and this, but that's it. The other thing, we can't fix it. But here are proposed ordinances, here are studies that we've done that lead to the development of downtown. We need this to be tied to the comp plan. We need this to be tied to like a real reason why this makes sense. We don't have that information. I mean, do you see that point or not? You don't see that point, or am I wrong?
If anything,
How am I wrong?
the one component that I just wanna add is that we did hire, Able City to update the land development code. And so one of the component when it comes to professionals doing studies, from our part, we won't be able to give you that data. Like, I'll be straight out. We're pretty much building civil engineers, and we don't have that capability. But we did hire this consultant to pretty much look into the land development code, which portion includes the setbacks. So from their part, one of their duties from their items to do is one, also verify with the comp plan, and also even verify many components, including the zoning. So when it comes to a professional, it would be actually Able City, whenever they're already under contract with us to do those,
Okay.
that research. So they would be able to really provide that feedback.
All right. Let me recognize before,
I have
Go ahead.
one more question. On the Corpus Christi where the setbacks are 5 foot in the front, do we know if, when they develop the lots, do they do it similar to the drawing that he drew there? The description of the channels between the lots? In other words, would this be more costly to developers to do development?
No, pretty much. Well, what happened what made it a bit more flexible, I think it was 2 years ago that we updated the stormwater ordinance. Long story short, it allowed to drainage to the back. And so before the original concept, well, not original, but the concept before that was everything had to drain to the front. And so that's where you had retaining wells and engineers had to be creative in how to make that lot drain. Pretty much with the rear lot, drainage has actually provided more flexibility to the developer. Yeah.
And that's the answer to your question, Commissioner. If I can be recognized, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
okay.
There's no answer. And there's no answer because the subdivision needs to be prepared and then an engineer will be hired so they can actually create a good flow with a 5-foot setback. I can answer about the 20 feet. We have the lot right here and we got 20-foot setback right here. So we have the house. This is the residence. So this is an area. What happens is when you have all the rain, this area will actually take a lot of the water.
Sure.
See? So when we have the back section right here, we got 20 feet minimum, so this will absorb a lot of the water. So your question is, what's gonna happen when we only have 5 feet? Well, there's no answer, not right now. But when somebody comes to us and say, we're gonna go ahead and make a subdivision right here, well then, the areas that are gonna be 5 feet in between, actually these are gonna be 10 feet. 10 feet. This, they're gonna have to engineer in a way that since there's not gonna be any absorption of the water, so the runoff is gonna have certain velocity. So how are they gonna do it? Well, either they're gonna have to put, channels
Or swell them around the house.
to put
I have
it
a
back
solution.
to here. So there's no, he's right, there's no answer right now. So is it a good idea? But we don't have any
I have the
depth in that.
solution, but go ahead, I have the solution, go ahead.
Yes, hold on just 1 second. So, I mean, everybody has already brought up the, what do you call it? The, engineering, the physics of it all, you know, about why it's a bad idea to retrofit or to pass this on existing subdivisions. So, I don't know why TRB would have, I mean, you all know these things too, right? Some of you all must know these things that these two gentlemen are telling us about, especially, you know, I talk about runoff all the time at every meeting. Are we looking at that as permeable, is there enough permeable surface to absorb it? But, so why wouldn't the recommendation be, I mean, you all told the TRB board, this is a no-go. But
Well,
you
we
still have
pretty
to.
much expressed that concern, but at the end of the day, the recommendation from their part, it's their recommendation. Yeah.
Okay, so
And
then,
the stand of staff, again, is we only recommend to approve the carports and not the front and not the rear sets. This is what we're presenting to this commission.
okay,
As
so,
far as staff,
okay, so I'm worried,
I think it's industry people that have some,
no, I'm certain,
Yeah,
no, that's
it's
the
some
backstory,
some
we all heard who
economic-
it is.
there's an economic, yeah.
Yes, they don't care
Yeah.
about the parking in the street or about flooding and let
Yeah.
them blame the city. So if you do a survey, in a pure democracy, if you put a survey out there, everybody's gonna say they want 50% of their
Yeah.
water rate back or whatever. And it can't be done, that's why I think the survey's fine, but it's gonna you're just gonna put more pressure on councilmen to make a bad decision.
well,
Yes, it's really that if somebody, we were at our last meeting, all that property down by Wormser, with 150 acres and 200 acres and down, you know, Cuatro Vientos area. I mean, I don't know what's out there yet, but if somebody wants to do a master plan like that and they do your, Mr. Vaness's runoff coefficient study and these drainage issues are solved and the fire, what's that material called? You have to have it, you gotta find the setback. That's right, all that's gotta be embedded. You all wanna do it, you do it over here where it's right, where we can engineer it all and you all have to pay for this and you advertise. And then they show you the master plan about, here's the buffer, here's how it looks. So then you all help decide and guide it into it being a transition from R1 to whatever the hell. And
That's one thing that we haven't thought about, and I'm gonna throw it out.
maybe it's my idea.
No.
he wants to get it out.
Here's the issue. Let's assume that this setback requirement went back to 5 feet. The ISO rating for this community for your fire insurance is gonna go up big time. I don't think anybody has researched that. And that is a big issue that we need to take into consideration.
Which is the reason why staff said yes on the carports, because on the impervious, it's already concrete. We're just adding a roof over. So you're not adding to the runoff on carports. You're not adding to the water and sewer impact because it's not livable. That's the reason staff said, yeah, we agree with the setback, maybe 50% of the setback is maybe, cause we were getting a lot of people coming back and saying, can I get a carport? That's why we agreed to that.
Okay, so let's put carport to the side for a second, okay? Let's just go back to this one issue. Why don't we recommend this? Why don't we recommend that there be a study of what you would need to do in order to have these setbacks? And have the city council outline, like, if you want these types of setbacks, these are all, like, kind of what he was saying. Like, these are all the things that you have to have in order to be able to do this, and see what that would look like. And then maybe we can pass something like that, like, here's an exception to the ordinance, like, here, you can do this 5-foot setbacks, but you have to do all these other things too. Because right now, as we stand, you know, and why do I say that? And why do I say that? Because again, maybe the comp plan has an idea for housing that has shorter setbacks. Okay, but it will only work under certain scenarios or under certain conditions. Okay, and so I think it's premature to say, no 5-foot setbacks ever, but I also think it's premature to say, yeah, we're gonna do this. Well, I think it's impossible to do it. I think it's an absolute no on what they're proposing now.
Well-
And I think that we let able cities come back and say, when you do a 5-foot setback, this is what you have to have. This is the only condition under where to work. You know,
It would be a new community, a new master plan.
That's
A
what
new-
I'm
a
saying.
new master
You're
plan.
really talking about a new community.
Yes.
You're not talking about this proposal that right now, the way it stands, is they wanna go citywide with it.
yeah,
You're talking about an area that is gonna be a new area,
designated,
and it's gonna be engineered
Yeah.
for these kind of things, which makes sense. That is the appropriate way to go.
We
But
can
to
al-
say we're gonna do the whole city,
or you can do it in an existing area, however, you still meet that criteria.
We can do a pilot program.
You see what I mean? Like I'll give you, no, let me give you a perfect example. Like, let's say right now, you have downtown, right? But as downtown gets developed, all of those neighborhoods around downtown may one day become areas that get developed as well. Okay, maybe
Sure.
someone buys a lot there and they
Redevelop.
wanna do something that where this would make sense. Right, I'm just saying this would make sense. You would wanna be able to give that leeway to be able to do that. But again, I think that ties back to able cities, and I think it ties back to the comp plan. You know, you can do these different setbacks, but when it ties to specific housing criteria in the comp plan and some guidelines on when it works and when it doesn't work.
okay, well, and before I go to him, let me go ahead and ask this, because your thought is, okay, so how do you get your hands around your thought? You know, if you're looking at the whole city right now, I know what you're telling me. You're saying, hey, well, there might be areas of parts of the old downtown that can be redeveloped. I get it. So how do we channel, or how do we present that and say, there might be areas in the city that this might work, but how do we do that?
I think it's, is it in the criteria of what Able City is doing right now? Is it within their framework to figure out?
They could just bring it back as an individual thing.
Well, what I
It's
am
really sound-
thinking
sound
of
bring it
is
back.
this, I'm thinking really, okay, we've got a comp plan now. We really need somebody that be what you call a short-term or long-term planner. To be looking at existing areas of the community now and do an analysis and say, well, in this area, this is something we might recommend to P and Z to look at. You know what I'm saying? But somebody has to do that kind of a study.
But
Or-
shouldn't the developer that wants to do this, do that?
Well,
Not necessarily.
no, because it can be existing dwellings,
Because it could-
and that's what he's looking at, existing dwellings in the older parts, I think, of town.
Yeah, no, what I'm saying is, you wanna have a set of tools,
Yes.
right? So what this, go ahead, do you have a comment?
Yeah, it pretty much the suggestion going to what you're saying is, we can try to make contact with Able City. They do have, like I said, to evaluate the whole land development code. which includes the setbacks. What we can try to do, they do have allocated to do, interaction with the public. I think this is a good venue to even start some dialogue.
I think that's good, but I think.
I'd like Mario to come.
I
And
think
we
what
did
I would like
invite
to
him.
see is,
We did invite him to this
We
meeting.
need to have, yeah, I think we need to have Able Cities come and tell us what they're doing.
well, I don't disagree, but I mean, I still think that, you know, we need to look at, like you said, we have a comp plan that was passed. Now let's take a look at that comp plan, because really, nobody's really dissected it, okay?
Well, we did a little bit of research on the comp plan, and we do have it in your packet. If you, the first thing in your packet, it shows something that looks like this, and sort of right in the middle,
Okay,
below, sort of the square, it says comprehensive plan, and
Is it
this
an
is
email?
what we could find on setbacks.
I mean, yeah, no, but what I'm talking about
Very
is,
vague.
what I'm talking about is taking the existing comp plan right now, okay?
Mhm.
And the idea that you have, Carlos, of, okay, there might be some redevelopment areas that are old neighborhoods, 100 years or whatever you wanna call them, that we may wanna take a picture of and look at and say, okay, by, you know, shortening setbacks here, in this area, and by doing the engineering, you know, can it handle additional whatever? And then designated it, you know, like we have zoning districts and say, but, you know, establishing, like you said, a system of tools that guide how you're gonna develop, or redevelop, it's not develop, it's redevelop existing areas that bring gentrification in, is, I think, more or less where you're headed. But it does need, you know, a set of tools to say, okay, you're not allowed, and we gotta have like some of these standards that are in other cities, you know, so much impervious cover has to be on the lot size has to be X number of square feet.
And to be clear, they will be reviewing all the setbacks, everything in the land development code
Well,
during
then I
this
think,
process.
what you're saying and what he was saying is we may need to have Able City come here before us with another workshop,
Mhm.
or to explain to us, okay, what is it that you're gonna do?
Oh, yeah, exactly, because like if they're looking at setbacks, then why
They
are
will
we,
be.
then why are we looking at setbacks? We
Well-
should wait till they're done and then they can tell us what they're doing. And I don't mean that question, I don't mean that comment to
No,
you,
I mean, this
I
came-
mean to the TRB who sent this over here on this like, you know,
Because the
really
TRB had it,
unresearched.
what, a year since
Oh,
it's been about a
in
year that
June
they've
is
had
when-
it. You know,
And why didn't they, see, that's the thing, guys, super frustrated, not frustrated with the city, I'm
Mhm.
frustrated with the TRB, I mean, it's
Mhm.
like, how can you make a it's like, how can you make a recommendation without actually vetting the recommendation, and then this is now the third time we come to this, you know, and it's like we still have more questions than we have answers, and those comments are not directed to the city.
No, I agree with you, I mean,
It's
the thing is, this is not something that you can just do,
Yeah.
this is a long
Yeah, I
term,
kinda feel like it should be 7.
this is a long,
7 feet,
a
that's
long-
what I feel.
a long-term process, you know, it's a long-term process. Johnny?
And if I may, I think they should also look at 5, 10, and 15, because I mean, like I said, they're just going from one extreme to the other. You know, there's always room for compromise, there's always room for changes and adjustments. But, you know, maybe 15, maybe 10, I mean, just depending, you know, on what we've discussed, but just to go from one extreme to the other, you know, without even looking in between, you know.
And just to add Commissioner Narvaez's, one of the things that, like, I mentioned really early at the meeting, when it comes to Austin and San Antonio, if you see there, just looking the amount of columns, man, they broke it into really various amounts, and if you look at Austin, you know, the square footage of the lot area, you know, you go from an acre, 22,000, 15,000, 10,000, 6,000, 4,500, that's Corpus Christi actually, but when it comes to Austin, they have 3,600, 5,750, 10,000, and then San Antonio, they really went, into different segments from 10 acres, an acre, 20,000 square feet, 6,000, 5,000, 4,000, 3,000, 2,000, and 1,250. And so they really broke it off into, I believe they kind of they left it open so everybody has, you can pretty much choose what you want. And so I think that's a good idea.
And when you mentioned that point, if I'm you know, they're talking about all these studies, but it seems like they're just going off the numbers, like, oh, look, San Antonio has 5, but I'm sure they have a method to that madness.
Well, San Antonio has alleys,
Right.
like they have, their city is constructed completely different. McAllen has alleys, the majority of their neighborhoods, so we don't have that and it's caliche alleys which soak up water. They're completely constructed in a different way
So
than
it's hard to
Laredo's done.
be able to.
Yeah, you're
it's just to
shrinking
your
that
point,
they
it's hard.
provided an alleyway.
Yeah.
There's some good data in here about that on this letter packet.
So they rob you, they allow you to move up front, but you still have room in the back, and so it's not the same, they're completely different. And so Laredo's unique in that sense, that it's one of the few cities in all these cities that doesn't have alleyways, where everybody's back is to each other, and you have the setbacks on the back that give you some sort of privacy. And unfortunately, we're dealing a big issue with everywhere we're going, is that we're dealing with terrain as we expand out that it's more mountainous, you have a lot more arroyos, you're gonna deal with bigger overflow, and people don't realize or don't pay attention to what Johnny, or Commissioner Narvaez said about where we're having rain issues. Laredo doesn't rain like Corpus does. Corpus rains for all day at a slow, constant rate. Laredo rains hard for about an hour. Like, it's almost every time it rains here, it's a flash flood event.
Yeah.
And if we make the problem worse by minimizing the surface, and I think Carlos has a good idea, there's certain areas that already have storm sewers, and it's really only one, it's downtown Laredo. Like that, everything else, nobody else does that. People in the new neighborhoods, they have like a drainage ditch, and it's just a hole in the ground. Nobody has underground storm sewers. So it's a lot bigger than just willy-nilly coming up with 5 feet or 10 feet.
Right.
Like, why should we change it? Like, what's the big need to change it? Just because some people don't like it because they can't park their 5th car?
I think it's because there's like, I mean, I don't know who's in that TRB, but there's just some agenda that is not really being discussed, that is really what should be discussed, not
I
these
think we all
conceptual
know, I think
things.
we all kind of know that, but how do we wrap this up then?
Can I make a
Go ahead.
suggestion? I think from the feedback, I know we just presented this rough information on the survey. We don't have to do it, it's up to you. We just presented that just to see if we get some feedback or some data. But the other component, I think because of the questions and concerns that we have, we can try to make contact with Able City, set up a date for, because I think we all knew there was gonna be another workshop, and I think maybe having their professional expertise, kind of see what their approach is, and it might maybe give some peace of mind, this is what we're trying to do, and have them kind of provide at least, I don't think they'll have the final, I think, answer, but at least describe the approach that they're trying to do. And, yeah.
I think that's very appropriate. I mean, I think Carlos mentioned that.
Mhm.
They've been contracted to
Yes.
look at all the land development code. Why don't we give them a chance to kind of like get a little bit through it, or explain to us what their
Yeah.
methodology is gonna be?
Yeah,
They're gonna be looking at setbacks and stuff. Then we're gonna make recommendations, doesn't mean necessarily that they'll be accepted, but they're gonna be using some kind of methodology to make some recommendations to the land development.
Can I also add something?
Sure.
I want this to be a workshop, and I think that what we need to have in that workshop as well with Able Cities is what is gonna be what are obstacles that we currently face in complete implementation of that comp plan? How do other cities implement their comp plan? We need to know that, because again, you know, we don't, like none of us are planners on the planning and zoning. Maybe you are a planner, but we're not planners, you know? It's like, we need guidance on how this thing works.
Sure.
And why isn't it completely been working, what's next, and what are they doing to empower the commission, but also developers and, you know, the community to implement this comp plan. So I think that should be covered in that as well, some topic about
I
it.
agree. I mean, so Vanessa's taking notes on that, and so is Victor.
Is this proposed survey,
Yes.
did anybody add anything or change anything?
I don't think we should do this already.
Yeah, don't do this
I don't
already.
think we should, I think we should
It's
pause,
unnecessary.
I think we should pause until we have an opportunity to talk to Able Cities
First.
and get more information before we do anything.
Would you guys entertain inviting the TRB? for
Not
them
yet.
to- Huh?
Not yet.
No,
You know,
because I think
I-
first we wanna know, what is Able Cities gonna be doing?
But maybe TRB can provide, you know, we're telling you, it's like, we would tell them all this stuff and it was never an option for them to consider. The agenda was, you know, we know what we're gonna do, and so thank you for the recommendations, and we see, and, but this is where we're gonna go and move on.
I just don't think TRB's gonna offer anything right now. I mean, unless, let me ask you this question, are they gonna provide something other than what you've already told us?
Oh, no.
Okay, then.
But they're gonna give you their input and so you can see.
But is
We
it
already
any
know
different,
that.
Well,
but
we
is
know
it
the
any,
input.
but
We
is it
already
any
have it.
different, is it any different from what you've already, that's already been presented? Okay, then,
No,
at
because
this
this
point.
is what they're proposing.
Yeah,
and-
so at this point, they don't have anything new to offer, we really need to get and listen to Able Cities and really get answers to the questions. And again, these comments are not to the city, this is to TRB.
And just in case the Able City, they do have as a portion of their service for public outreach,
Pretty much just that.
just in case, so they,
Yeah, and we want to.
there's that, yeah, yeah.
That's an architecture firm, which is Viviana Frank and Mario Peña, they merged and they came up with Able Cities.
But they're also they were also on the comp plan.
They did the
So
comp plan.
there's
And it's their duty to
connectivity
also
between
get,
that.
work with the comp plan
But,
also, yeah.
and Able Cities subcontractor, you know, people from Florida who are the experts in various, the guys from Austin, the guy from Colorado,
Yeah.
different firms, and they're gonna be providing their
Correct.
expertise based on what we need for our,
Yeah.
codes and land development.
But can I say something? I'm glad that TRB brought this, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because if this hadn't come, then we wouldn't be having this workshop on these points, on how we analyze these types of issues on the setbacks, and how we analyze the issues of implementing that comp plan. So this thing that I think has been ill conceived is actually a good thing.
Blessing in disguise.
It's a blessing in disguise.
We're gonna dig in.
Good.
All right, now let me just add, let me ask one other thing of the commission. There was 3 items that you were proposing. One was the carports, and you mentioned it earlier. Do y'all wanna discuss the carport issue at all, or do y'all wanna just let
tell
that
me
in
what was it
abeyance?
again? Just
The
what was it
carport
again?
issue was this: the current ordinance allows you to build only half of the setback for a carport.
Okay.
The
The setback is
proposal,
20.
huh?
The setback's 20.
Yes, only half. The proposal was that you be allowed to build to the edge of the property, a carport only, open carport.
And the easement issue is ignored, or?
No, pretty much an easement for the subdivisions that have the front easement, pretty much the easement controls their construction
Their
limit,
limit.
correct.
So
An
it's 75
easement-
feet.
an
In other
easement is
words,
so
if there is an
respected.
easement in the front,
Yeah,
You build up to the easement.
yeah,
Correct,
now, if you
yeah.
wanna take a chance and build into the easement and get it busted, that's your,
No,
but they're not gonna approve it at the
Right.
city.
we're not gonna
Well,
prove that it's an easement.
No,
Whether
the
they approve it or
carport, the
not,
proposal is to go up to the
doesn't matter.
property line.
Things
But you already
happen.
have a concrete slab for a driveway. So they're already gonna either break the concrete for the driveway if they have to go in there. But so the proposal is to go all the way to the property line. Not the, I guess.
The overhang.
the edge, the overhang cannot pass the property
But
line.
wouldn't you want to be, because that means you're all the way up to the sidewalk.
No,
No,
They're open,
there-
no, there's
there's-
still another 10 feet past the carport
Yeah, but
to
from-
the edge of the street.
I guess to, I don't know if I should.
Can you
draw
draw,
it.
yeah, can you draw
Yeah,
it so we
let
can
me-
see
let
it?
me-
We're not in this dry erase board.
Yeah.
yeah,
Sorry, traffic department, whatever you were doing.
No, they,
I don't
Did
know
they
if I
say
know
they
draw.
did?
yeah, no, they didn't.
No?
Actually,
Can you show us what's there now, and then can you show us what you're
I'll
proposing?
use this is your curve. Pretty much the property line,
That's the 20-foot setback property line.
No.
no, that's the
Oh,
property line.
property line, sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
Typically, it's 9.5 feet from the back of curb to the property line. So if you're talking the sidewalk, you know, and you're removing 4, which is 5.5 feet. Yeah,
I thought the setback was 20.
and then
No,
and
no,
then
no,
from
no.
there
Oh.
you have your setback.
Another 20.
That's a setback as to where the building is constructed.
Correct,
Okay.
and that's 20. And so pretty much, this is your building. I'm actually drawing it wrong. But this is your building, so the carport, if this is your property line, is pretty much to this limit. So you still have 5.5 feet from this to the sidewalk. This belongs to the city. Typically, on this 5.5 feet, or, and this segment, that's where you find your water, your
Utilities.
sewer, or
And-
utilities.
And that's part of the easement?
And then when it comes for the
8
front
feet?
lot easements, you'll find it in the 10 feet within the 20-foot setback, the dry utilities.
So that's the sidewalk right there?
This part, usually they're hugging the curb.
Okay, so that's the sidewalk,
Yeah, that's 5 feet.
that's still the property,
Yeah, the 4.5 feet.
that's where the,
Public right-of-way.
that's where the drive,
Correct, yeah, the right of way from the curb, it's 9.5 feet.
9.5 feet.
That belongs to
from
the
back
city.
of curb
Mhm.
to where would be the edge of the carport. is what you would have.
Okay, I guess that going back to the example of when you do the stop sign, when you do the street light, why would we do this? Like, what's the reason for
Let
doing
me
it?
tell you
The
why.
south is 110 degrees.
You got a car
That's a tree.
or a pickup,
By the time
I
it goes
built
20
10 feet,
I
half of
have
my
bigger
vehicle
tree.
is
Most rich
not
guys.
covered.
Yeah.
That's the why. And it goes back many, many years where people would say, hey man, I just wanna make sure my car is under the carport so it doesn't get super hot.
What if it hails?
Yeah.
Well, and what if it hails? Well, the way it was written, or the way it's written right now, you're only allowed 10 feet, so half of your vehicle's sticking out.
Yeah.
Is it half your vehicle or is it the one vehicle but the second vehicle's not fully?
No, because normally what you have is you have a 2-car pad, okay? And on a 2-car pad, well, you have 2 cars, but half of them are sticking out.
Okay, now what are gonna be the design standards for this? Like, in other words, what if it's a hodgepodge of different types of carports and then we don't, like, you know, in other words, he's got his interesting idea of how he's gonna do his carport on the property.
They're probably those aluminum ones or galvanized metal that.
Well, I mean,
HOA
here's the deal,
regulations- HOA
there's,
rules also tell you what.
No, but these are not just gonna affect HOA neighborhoods.
Well, there's carports all over the place, and they're not halfway, they're all the way up.
Yeah, they're all the way up, they're
So
all
all the way
But
up.
I know, but that's not a reason for making a decision.
Just in case, one of the reasons I wanna kind of tag what Mr. Piera is saying, when it comes to the Board of Adjustment, one of the many cases that there is, it has to do with the front, with the carport. The other one, I don't have a stat, but just being the acting building director, and I'm pretty sure Mr. Pinzon had some, we've gotten many customers that, or citizens or such, that they want that carport, and we tell them, sorry, you can only do 10 feet.
It just,
And-
it's an illogical thing.
Yeah, and it's like,
illogical.
and pretty much it's like, how am I gonna cover my car, you know, and
Yeah.
that's the really the main comment. And
And
so
I'll
we
tell
see
you-
that, we say that like so much.
I'll tell you where
yeah.
this came from,
Yeah,
why and why it was written like that. In the early 90s, we had a planning director that we brought into the city. Her concept was, in this town, this population, if you allow them to build a carport all the way out to the edge of the property, they're gonna end up closing it and making it into living quarters, and they're gonna put the cars out on the street. That's why that was her mentality.
Your fear.
Yeah. And truthfully, you know, you see carports all over the place right now, and
yeah, we
it's
have
just an
many
issue
violations.
without any violations.
To that
I mean,
specific item.
it's an enforcement issue,
Mhm.
okay? That the city would have to undertake, but right now, for your common citizen, it's like, hey, this is stupid, why am I gonna build a half carport, only put half of my car or my truck in? Stupid.
Any chance that this goes all the way to the sidewalk on some setbacks?
No.
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
No, if anything, the minimum would be 9.5 feet,
Yeah.
and there's some that you'll see, depending on the road, you'll have a wider space from the sidewalk.
And it's clear they know they gotta go all the way up, it's 20 feet from the building, or
Yeah.
That's a
where do you start the 20-foot measurement?
From the property line. And so pretending, actually, let me use this room, pretending this room is your lot. This is your property line, you still have 9.5 feet to the curb that way. So up to the property line, you're able to build your carport. This is your building.
You're gonna
You
have
That's how
20
the
you
deeds,
have-
like the surveys, they
Correct,
show that?
Oh,
correct,
yeah,
and so you
yeah.
have 20 feet, and so pretty much when it comes for the carport, you're talking about able to cover just the driveway component up to the property line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And somebody goes and takes a look, if they ask for the permit?
Yeah, correct, we pretty much do the inspection
Oh,
for it,
okay.
yeah. Yeah, pretty much like an accessory.
You know, this would be, the 20-foot, the 20
For
feet
that
setback.
example,
Right now, they're building, they're allowing
Yeah,
only 10 feet.
Right.
So what Ramo was saying, well, you're getting a half carport. So this
That's
is
what it would
this
look
is the
like.
sidewalk.
That's what it looks like now.
So
Well,
they
not
wanna
necessarily.
go
You can
ahead and
build
do
to match
all
your
the way
roof
to
There-
the
there's
you see the
different-
sidewalk and you see the extra buffer that the.
And I think that's a good idea, because we will keep the 20 feet setback.
So imagine
but
that
we will
half.
allow
But in
2 feet
under
right
no,
now.
but under no circumstances can they add to their house.
No,
Other than it just can only be
it's
a
an
carport.
open carport.
Three
Okay,
sides.
and that-
And
and
just
that
in case-
Carport is
goes-
three
Yeah,
sides open.
and just
The
in case,
maximum
Two
that you
cars.
can do on that carport is, I believe it's a 3-foot, little fence.
and just in case the definition, for the definition, I don't wanna sound rude or anything, but just the definition on the building setback means enclosed. And so when it comes for accessories, if you wanna do a palapa and such, it's really flexible, to be honest.
Okay.
It's when it comes to the enclosure that gets really sensitive. And so the rear setback, you cannot do more, on the front, you cannot do more. And so the reason we're being open with the carport, cause it's an open structure.
Yeah, I think it's a
Yeah,
good idea.
keep it in mind that
Like
the
you said,
HOA.
But I can't take your word for it. We have to think about it.
It's been thought of.
It's,
That's really
keep
the.
in mind that it's
You're not
still
slow to catch up.
subject to
All right.
HOA
So then,
regulations.
let me see.
Just because the city said you can do it.
Is there a consensus
I wish we
among
knew
this
what texting
board
was
that
like
that
that.
particular item can go forward?
I think so.
As long
So
as,
that
as
they
long as,
can put it on our P and Z.
as long as they don't take it up with the other item and just circumvent it.
This is why I'm saying right now, the only thing that I'm asking this board right now, if there's a consensus among the board for staff to bring that back, that one item on the carport only, to the P and Z for approval.
Two cars.
A two-car,
Two car max.
Side by side.
yeah, which is the standard right now, but basically most.
Yes,
most
but you
residential.
notice when you bring that, please bring the detail that shows that it's the sidewalk plus that city piece, because if not, well, then they'll even be on the sidewalk, of course, 'cause some people will do that.
Right.
Yeah, we've had those type of violations.
But are we gonna have issues with taking that portion out and only dealing with that portion? I
No,
don't-
there isn't, because I had asked him last time,
Bring three
the
seconds.
ordinance can be amended
Split up.
by, actually, you can do 3 sections to amend the ordinance.
It could be like no action, and action.
Well, the only thing they're gonna bring to us would be that little section of the ordinance that amends the carport, and that's it.
But here's what I wanna know is, like, once it goes up to city council, let's assume we approve it for a second. Goes up to city council, then city council says, hey, you know what, time out, we wanna actually also adopt the 5.
Well, it wouldn't be on the agenda,
They
so it
can't.
couldn't vote, yeah.
They can't, you know why?
Why?
Right now, under state law, for them to adopt changes to the setbacks, there has to be a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission, either yay or nay, for them to take action.
Did they get it?
But is our yay on the carport?
That's it. The only thing you're
Get them
taking
in.
up,
They're only gonna bring the carport
you're
out.
only
Right.
taking a carport
We're
item
gonna-
up.
we're
You're
gonna
not bringing the setbacks
take
in.
out what we
And
said.
to summarize really quick, if you would get the city, oh man, well, the chart, I guess I'm seeing it right there,
That
if you would get that chart, pretty much the only change you would see is really the notations on the very bottom, being specific that for the open structure on the front lot. You wouldn't see really a change on any of the numbers on the chart,
No,
just for the peace of mind, yeah.
I mean, that would be our.
I'm just afraid that if we say yay on one piece, then that allows them to vote on the rest of it.
That's what I was asking.
No, but they're only going to bring.
No, but see, that's not what I'm talking about. I know what
I
you're
know-
saying.
I know
We
what
have no control over what, let's say we're controlling what they're gonna bring. But when you're George Allgeld and you get it, and he says, well, you know what, I wanna do, now that I've got this yay on this one part, now I wanna vote on the rest of it.
No, but that's illegal. If it's not posted
Well,
on
I
the
just
agenda
want- well,
72 hours prior
I'm
to the
gonna
meeting, you
split it
can't
out
take
into
action on
3
it.
parts.
What we can do, and just so,
3
for
orders.
peace of mind,
Take it to legal.
the next meeting, we'll invite Able City, to address the other concerns, and we can invite legal, if you wish, just to know what powers or limits, both P and Z and, planning
I
and
just
city.
Just
Just to
want the
give you that
city
comfort.
attorney to tell us that, yeah, if you only vote on yay on one part, they can't go up on the other part in the city council meeting.
No, but.
It would be an illegal
No,
action.
no, but they're not going to bring the setback item to us to vote on. It's not even gonna exist in front of
No,
us.
but it's in the same ordinance.
It's
You're
gonna
gonna
appeal
split
that,
up.
No,
no.
here's the deal. The
It's
way
not
it's
the same
gonna be,
ordinance?
the way it's gonna be
split up.
worded,
Just explained it.
the way it's gonna be worded, the only change that is gonna come to us pertains to the carport, period. That's the only wording that will be brought to this commission, okay? Our recommendation is gonna be specifically on that only.
Okay. If you feel confident that that's enough, then that's.
Well, even if they bring something out, we can stay with it. That's not what was supposed to be brought.
Yes, you wouldn't go forward.
I mean, we would just say, you know what, that's not what we asked you to bring forth, and we're taking no action.
We all
And-
just double check for
And
peace of
and then
mind.
the other logistical
And what provision of this, of what statute, of what ordinance are you talking from?
It's a state statute.
Okay, well, I mean, that's just, I mean, what?
And
But-
like I said, we can have,
but
just
look,
for the
we
peace
can-
of mind, we can have
You
legal.
can have legal and just say, look, the commission is concerned about, if this particular section goes forward,
That's
only
what I'm worried about.
can the city council add any rider to it, I guess is the word that I could think of.
Okay.
And if they can, then at that point in time, just forget it.
Right.
I don't think
And
they
the reason
can
I
because
say that-
it's not a posted item, It's an illegal action.
Yes.
Just to
Yeah, but
verify,
but
just
you
to
could
verify,
word, you
it's
could word, here's the thing, the Open Meetings Act, you can post the item broad enough.
Well, we're gonna make sure that.
That's the thing. You can-
There's their fine line there.
you
You
can-
can't, you have to have a very specific reason when you post an agenda item. If it is too broad, you'll get yourself in trouble.
Well, legal.
We had
legal will
issues
torpedo
with
it if
that,
it's
we
too
had
broad.
issues
That's
with
right.
that a few years ago, about 10 years
My
ago.
experience.
And I'm telling you by
We
experience.
should have a
went out and
governance
We tried to
training.
do some acquisition, and they just listed, we want to do acquisition in South Laredo,
Period.
period. So, reata ching.
Yeah, but they could write discussion and action on
Only for
ordinance.
No, you're too broad. We got that, anyway.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion, a second, and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
I want to thank you all. Presentation was
Yes,
By the
thank you.
way, legal provided me that training when I was on the school board.
Okay, yeah.
about